Welcome to Soul Cafe. We will start with a little reflection. And for those who have joined or will be joining, today's topic will be inner fitness, specifically about controlled movement. And so we will have a little reflection to begin. What happens when I slow down in any task that I do? And of course, there is physical slowing down. But because I'm so affected by my surroundings, by my actions, it affects my inner world. It affects my mind. It affects my decision making. But what happens when my inner world is this inner space that's filled with peace, a responsive inner world instead of a reactive one? What if that inner world within me is a world of contentment, where I feel content? How would that affect my decisions, my actions? How would it affect my capacity to make decisions that are clear, that are based on the values that matter to me, where my vision of myself stays intact, my sense of being, that it doesn't shake, and I can think about things that only honor the true me, make decisions that only honor the heart. Every action that I perform, every decision that comes from this place of grace and self-mastery, not a place of reaction. That no matter what is happening around me, no matter what the outcomes, I have this gentle capacity within to move through life with dignity, respect for myself and others. It seems so easy on the outside for someone looking at such a being. But what does it take for that to be possible? Is that something of my inner world? Does there need to be a foundation? Om Shanti.
Yeah, she was very poor probably.
Om Shanti. This might turn into an interview. But no, don't worry. So today the topic we're exploring is controlled movement. And there's a reason that I was really pulled to explore this, and I think it crosses over in many, many aspects of our life. But perhaps as always, we'll explore, and the only one I can really see is Nora there. We'll explore and ask you what, in terms of physical fitness or physical movement, what does control have to do with physical fitness or physical movement? So let's see if anyone has some thoughts to share on what they feel the connection is. I guess you're the one sharing that.
Should I come on camera? Okay.
You can share the spotlight, yeah.
Sorry, could you repeat the question again?
So what, in terms of physical fitness or physical movement, what does control have to do with that? What's the connection between control and movement?
You know, what comes to mind actually, probably an experience that has always stayed with me. I know, Judy, you've heard of it. Some may have heard of it, but when I was, I went to a Nutcracker ballet, and I have seen maybe a handful of ballet performances, and probably nothing live, to be honest with you. So you're watching, from the audience, many, 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 many meters away. It's very beautiful watching, and very graceful, beautiful movements, but not growing up with dance, ballet specifically, not really being able to appreciate what is required for that. And so when we purchased these tickets for my sister's birthday, we were quite late in getting the tickets. So we were actually, the only tickets left were like completely at the very, very front of the room. Right? Basically, a very lovely opportunity. Actually, when we were sitting there, I was actually at awe, to watch, because I could actually feel, maybe being in the study, I could feel some subtleties I may not have been aware of, but I could feel this profound strength that was required when you're watching them move, you can actually palpably feel it to be able to hold these different postures. And I wouldn't have thought about that, but watching them, I realized you need strength to be able to move your body in a certain way, in a way that you want, how you want, for however long that you want. And I don't think we think about that. We think that we can move things in a very quick way, but you don't feel that sharpness of the different postures. And I know Judy has shown me a couple of dance videos here and there through the years. And I could tell, again, I don't know how to describe it, but there's a very clean feeling when the movement is in a way that creates, again, a very beautiful experience. And I've seen movement where there isn't that controlled experience, even though that might be maybe because you see comparatively to three dancers who are dancing. And I can actually feel the overall difference of the feeling when you're watching these dancers. There's a feeling of precision that adds to the beauty. So I don't know if that answers your question.
Before I go.
Mm-hmm. Yes, definitely. Today, today is one of many days that I've seen this again, as you're describing with respect to movement. And today I was in a class and I noticed, and this is very common, it's not new, you see this every day, but there's really two things happening with movement. There is the internal activity and the external activity. So an example might be the swan on the lake, that above the surface there's this incredible grace and flow, and then if we look below the surface there's a lot of power and activity, and we wouldn't even think about what's going on below the surface that's actually making what's going on above the surface possible. So in physical movement, and we see this a lot in the fitness studio, there are also these two aspects. There's the external, the movement of the limbs, etc., and then there's the internal foundation or the internal activity. And what happens very often is that we become so sort of attracted or pulled by the external show. How high is my leg? How big are the weights? That we just think, and this is connected to the idea of success, we think this is the measure of success. And I was really noticing today, because I've had situations where we'll have two people in the class and they are doing the same activity, and if you're looking just in a very superficial way, people walk away saying, oh yeah, no, they looked exactly the same. And I always, in my mind, say, they were nothing the same. This is a bit like identical twins, where for most people they say, I can't tell the difference. No, you can tell the difference. If you're paying attention to the subtleties, you can. So, the legs seem to be the same height. Probably one of the most classic examples is when we get people to stretch their hamstrings, so they're lying on their back, they take one leg, extend it into the air with the idea of sort of stretching out the hamstring. And we can have two people doing this exercise, and their foot appears to be the same distance from their head. But if you look carefully, one has their leg straight, and the other has their leg bent. One is getting a hamstring stretch or benefit from the exercise. The other is getting no benefit from the exercise because their hamstring isn't stretching. But they're trying to get their foot close to their head at any cost. Because in their mind, foot close to the head means I'm doing something valuable and completely sacrificing the actual exercise. This happens constantly in a fitness class. Constantly. I saw it happening this morning. And so it translates into day-to-day life. Absolutely. That I'm going to do something and look at the outcomes or the superficial features of the activity at any cost. because again we have a concept of value or success. At any cost I want this outcome, and if you look very closely, it's actually at a great cost. That the more subtle aspects are completely misaligned. So the thing I like about controlled movement, and I was just talking with a client this morning, we were doing some ballet movements, and we were doing something that looks extremely simple to people observing. It looks extremely simple. Now, if you were with us in the room, and I was with the client so I could be quite close, her legs were shaking because the effort was so great to control the movement and execute it properly. Someone watching would say, oh, no problem, I can do that. So this is classic for ballet because things look so simple, and because of the capacity to control, they make it look so easy. Now, when we look at Raj Yoga, we call it easy Raj Yoga. And it's interesting what happens. Everything from, oh yes, no, I've heard all this before, to, yeah, no, I'm doing the practice and I'm getting these results in my life, but the thing that actually allows Raj Yoga, it's called Raj Yoga because it's about self-mastery or self-control. It's about being able to control the self in day-to-day life. So it's all about controlled movement. In fitness, the control comes from deep within, from the core, and we've talked about so much. When the core is properly trained and the alignment is accurate, there is that precision you talked about, and that grace, and that easiness, and that flow, and that beauty. And we might as well be talking about spirituality when we're using those words. Even driving here today, there's a jogger that went by, and again I can see that thinking, what pulls us away from that foundation of controlled movement? It's the pull, you could say, of ego, but the pull of a certain outcome. Because as I was driving here today, I saw a jogger on the road, and I remember he was coming from a distance, and at first I thought, is he okay? Like he just looked so. And as he got closer, I saw he was jogging with what we call a weight vest. So it's a vest that has weights in it. It's a weighted vest. And I remember thinking, why is he doing that? Like his gait wasn't even looking right. So why add the vest? Why accentuate what's wrong by adding? And he looked absolutely like, I thought, is he going to be okay? And it reminded me of when I was very young, and I was waiting for the bus, and this young man went jogging by. And this scene is imprinted on my mind because there was so much grace and flow and control and ease and lightness, all the qualities we use in spirituality, in his movement. And I just thought, that's how I want to move. Not only how I want to move, that's how I want to live. It's the feeling I'm getting from watching him. He's not wearing a weighted vest. He's just wearing some really ordinary sweats, easily dismissed by anyone on the street as just someone jogging. I was like, no, he is a very royal jogger. So this dignity, this grace in day-to-day life, in movement, the incognito power required to create that outcome is huge, and very often dismissed because we just go for the outcome. This is a constant dynamic in day-to-day life, in spirituality. So how can it be easy Raj Yoga that delivers all it promises? That royalty, that beauty, that lightness, everything it promises. We've talked about this so many times that this is going to be the shortest Soul Cafe ever, because I'm a broken record. But of course we know it's again that deep incognito work of soul consciousness, of the quiet stuff, the inner alignment of my consciousness. Do I understand I'm a soul? Because that unlocks the capacities that I want to really color my movement, my activity. And I often used to think, I've heard ballet described in many ways as a pure form of dance. I've heard the word soul used with it, which surprises people because they think that, African is soul or hip hop is soul. They never think of that. But to be honest, though, when people watch ballet, the qualities they describe it are the same qualities we use to describe spirituality. The dignity, the poise, the grace, the flow, the lightness, the ease. Today I had a client training, and this client surprises people over and over again. Due to some medical things, they are what we might call a bit larger frame. And we had them doing what's called box jumps. So they jump from the ground onto a platform in a squat. And whenever I have souls doing box jumps, because we want it to be controlled movement, if we have music in the studio, we turn the music off or down so I can hear how they're landing. If they are controlling the movement, they're like ninja. They're absolutely silent. Now, if someone looks at their soul and the girth of the body, they might think there's no way they can land quietly, just by virtue of the size that they are moving. There's no way. And I remember she went to take, but she has a very strong ballet background. She went to take her first squat jump, silence. Every squat jump, silence. I have clients who are very, very slight of frame that cannot do this. They sound like a train landing. And she was like silent. If you're looking at the surface, you will be deceived. But I know she has extremely accurate alignment, very strong core. She can control. Yeah, go ahead, Nora.
Just got a question then. Do you, just when you're sharing, I know we're talking about physical, and they can definitely go into the subtle, the spiritual. But in that case, for that, you're talking about to be able to land and sound like, it's like a ninja.
Yeah.
Would you say that it has to do with also that there's damage or potential damage or harm if in this physical example that you aren't landing, in a way that there's so much noise, but we just think of noise, but I think eventually it must be affecting the joints. So on a spiritual level, what that could also be like.
So this is actually because I sent a note saying let's make this the topic, and it's very funny because you don't know when I sent that note. You didn't know what was going on. I just sent the note, but actually I was in a fitness class at the moment, and I was taking this fitness class, and literally my mind was absorbed in spiritual thought the whole time I'm in the class. I'll be completely honest. I was doing all sorts of interesting reflections in the class, and one of them was observing, this is what happens when souls throw their body around, throw the limbs around, thinking bigger is better. They actually damage themselves physically, especially if they are doing this repetitive. So we want to kind of bring things back to basics, and then what usually happens once they have the injury, then they take rehabilitative or physio or specifically mind-body classes. They land up in a Pilates class, which is going to force them to focus on the inner alignment. Force them. So they wait for a crisis to do that. And this is what happens in our day-to-day life as well, is that we're operating in a way that's very much pulled by the surface, by the image. There is no self-mastery. We're doing this over a long period of time. Eventually there's a crisis. There's a meltdown or there's something happen, and then we are forced to look at what's going on inside. We're forced to. So this happens definitely physically, that you watch souls kind of throwing themselves around, and thinking bigger is better, moving limbs around with no control. We had when I was very young in dance, there was a soul who was much younger than myself. She was, I think, 11 at the time, but a prodigy. And so I think she had just been accepted to the National Ballet Company in our country of Canada, the National Ballet Company of Canada, and just 11 years old, which is around the age that they normally start to look. And she had all of the boxes checked, anatomically, flexibility, everything. So I was in class with this soul for a while, and the one thing you definitely notice is she had what we call almost hypermobility. It's beyond super flexible. It's just things. It's like you would ask, does she have any bones? I mean, things just kind of wrap around her head and all sorts of things. And her legs went on for days, so there's a lot to wrap around her head. And she's only 11, and she wasn't. I don't think she was able to go to the national school because at that age she was already having back problems. She's only 11. Super mobile, but no core. So things are getting thrown around. Her head could touch her foot, the whole thing. Like she could fold herself in half in an extension. She could do it forward, but also backward, hyper mobile, but no core. So you can imagine things are getting thrown around, limbs could float around, kick up here, but there's no control. Looks amazing. The audience watches and thinks, wow, huge wow factor. But there's going to be injury. So at 11, she had now back problems. So if that happens repetitively, and again, we do it because it gets praise. We're looking for that value. We're looking for, wow, you can do this. Wow, you can lift heavy weights. Wow, you can jump so high. Wow. And meanwhile, at what cost? There's nothing wrong with jumping high, lifting heavy, or throwing. Nothing wrong. But if it isn't controlled, if there isn't that underlying structure, I will land up with crisis. So this happens in day-to-day life too. I can do very impressive things. I can get big projects done. I can all sorts of impressive things. But is it coming driven from the right place inside, the right alignment? Because over time, it will lead to burnout, it will lead to crisis, it will lead to irritation, it will lead to all sorts of things. So those are very loyal signs that there is not self-mastery. There's seeking, begging, bargaining that's driving my activity, my movement, not self-mastery. So it's easy Raj Yoga because if I follow the method, then everything becomes easy and light. That's the sign that I'm actually following the method, is everything is easy and light. Soul's looking at me, just like when I looked at that jogger, I thought, oh, they're so easy and light and graceful, and it inspired me. Not that it didn't inspire me to want to go jogging, trust me, I have no interest in going. It inspired me to have those qualities in my life, to move through life that way. And so it's so important to develop that self-mastery, that place of inner control. And again, there's huge crossover with physical. So I was lucky. I could take a alignment class today, and I love these classes. I can't tell you how much I love them. I love moving with awareness. I think it's why I went into Raj Yoga. We call it integration in Raj Yoga, but physically I like to move with awareness. And this idea of things are moving, and what happens is you look inside, in this case internally at the physical alignment. I look inside and see what do I need to adjust at the invisible level, and then I watch to see how it shows up or manifests at the external level. But I don't try and change it at the external level. I always like to go to the internal level. See, okay, what if I made this adjustment and I see what happens? If I ever feel pain in the body, my first go-to is over, what do I need to adjust at the invisible level to kind of set things up so that maybe the pain will go away? It's not that I go for an aspirin first or I try and do something external. It's always, what do I need to adjust internally in my posture, alignment, physically? And see how that manifests externally. It's always, I love that. I love that chain of events. So that's the same in spirituality. If I ever feel stress, heaviness, irritation, impatience, reactivity, for many, their first go-to is, what do I need to change externally? Do I need to move away from a situation? Do I need to set up boundaries? Do I need to talk to that person, tell them what they're doing wrong that's irritating me? That's always our first go-to. But what Raja Yoga teaches us over and over is, first place you must look is inside. You must look inside first. Sorry about that. You must look inside first. You must ignore what's going on outside. You must look inside first. And so these then become my allies, these feelings. If I'm irritated or annoyed or heavy or overwhelmed by anything, I literally, this morning I had this feeling, thank you. Thank you for this feeling coming. Just like when pain comes physically, it alerts me, you're doing something in the wrong alignment. Become aware of how your body is aligned and experiment with getting closer to what we call accurate alignment. So the same spiritually, if I'm feeling any of those things, like lately it's probably overwhelmed because there's so much going on, then the first place I look is, we look both internally and inwards and upwards, because in Raja Yoga we also bring into our awareness the relationship with God. So these are the two places we look. What is off in my relationship with self or my awareness? And usually it's nothing's happening with the relationship with God. So why am I not taking that subtle support from that being? How can that being help me? And we often, just as when in physical fitness, if someone has an injury, a ligament tear, anything like this, it will heal, but it's critical. Some injuries you can get away with continued abuse. It just takes longer to heal. But some, like an ACL to any of these big ligament tears, you're shut down. It will heal if you have to keep it you have to stabilize it in a very specific way. So they'll put those big braces on, right? So that's how we think of God in spirituality. He is a big brace that the soul is wearing, such that those old habits, those misalignments eventually fade away, because he's keeping me in right alignment. So if I'm feeling overwhelmed, I thank that feeling for coming, because it's telling me something is off inside. Now, the people around me, the various projects, they probably just want things to happen, right? They want this outcome, they want that project, they want whatever, and I respect that. And I might deliver, I might not, they might be upset with me, they might be happy with me, but I know that for me, it's not that I'm not going to do well, but I will. But for me, the most important thing isn't the outcome. The most important thing is what we call income, or that inner alignment. So I look inside, and am I soul conscious? Am I in a spiritual place? Am I taking? Because if we don't take from God, we will absolutely take from outside. And that's how we re-injure, right? So it's really important to always check, just as we do in physical fitness. If there's pain, it's a loyal indicator you are out of alignment. There's an imbalance, something's off. Similarly, physical and spirituality, if I'm feeling these feelings, I check inside first. I am out of alignment. And usually ego is behind all of the misalignments, almost always, whether ego's, pushing me to attach to something or pushing me to want something, ego's behind. So that means that I need to take a moment to reset the alignment, to get back into the self-respect, to reconnect with the one being who can actually fulfill what I'm looking for. I need to set that and let all the other chips fall where they may. But I need to set that. That's the most important thing. Because if I don't, whatever I'm doing might temporarily look successful, but it will fall apart because the foundation was not accurate. So I'm going to stop there. I don't know if there's anything you wanted to share.
Do I have to come in spotlight or can I
It's
stay?
up to you, whatever you'd like.
It doesn't really matter. I feel like as if it becomes an issue when I come on.
Right. Right.
But there was actually a few questions that came to mind, and one of them was about this precision piece.
Mm-hmm.
The question is sort of caught up in a physical way.
Mm-hmm.
I think I understand the connection in a spiritual way, but I don't know if you can explain for my question, then it may be able to sort of help to create a bridge for the spiritual as well.
Mm-hmm.
But when I was sharing that, there's been a handful of times where you would show me these dance videos, these souls who are dancing it, and you can see there's some who have very clean movement, there's precision. It just looks very beautiful.
Yeah.
But not everyone catches that. And maybe that's not something that really actually resonates with others. But
Yeah.
what is it? I don't know. I should answer my own question. I mean, I'm the one who feels it and it's beautiful, but I don't know what it is about precision and clean movement that makes it so beautiful.
Yeah. So, because I know you've even asked this once when you were taking a dance class, you asked, how can I hit the moves at a fast speed? How can I stay precise at a fast speed? And we said, well, that's what the core, it's only possible if the core is active. So your question is very interesting, and it's really where this all started for me, is the fact that you can even discern that. Not everyone can. As I said, they will look at two people and feel that they are doing the same thing. But in fact, it's clear that they're not. That one isn't clean, isn't in control, is not precise. But they're looking at a very, this is why eyewitness testimony is so bad. We're looking at a very almost foggy level. Very, very superficial, we sometimes use the word gross level, that we're not really seeing clearly. So in a class, souls will look in the mirror and they're not, it's not our physical eyes, they're working. But our inner eye, our discerning power isn't really refined. So we can't even see that it's not precise. We can't even see this isn't actually the most ideal execution of the movement. We just say, oh yeah, no, I had my arm there and my leg flew over there and yeah, I got it. It's like, actually no, that is not the most. So for those who are able, it's remarkable because they'll have beautiful, huge range of movement in a very short period of time. They are not throwing their body around. And I was laughing because the client today, the one I was referring to earlier, who had the ninja box jumps, the other thing we had her doing was called a narrow row, a bent over narrow, actually no, I'm sorry, it's bent over back fly, but it doesn't matter. So let's say it's a bent over narrow row. So they've got a heavy weight and they're bent over and they're working their back to pull it up. I don't know if you can see that, right? So imagine they've got a heavy weight. And I started to notice they're doing this. And I never told them to do that. And I was laughing. I said, oh my gosh, you're exactly like me. It must be the ballet training. Because I don't know if this is the two options. You can see that she was controlling the part where gravity wants to take over. Because this part of the movement, you're going with gravity. It just wants, and you see people drop weights. And she was like controlling it, and that's from her ballet training, right? So she had a very, very quick pull. It's not that all the movements are slow. So we call this tempo. And I was laughing because I thought, oh my God, you're so used to controlling your movement. And
But you're trained like that in ballet.
You're trained that way. So that you can do ballerinas can do very quick movements, but for them internally, it almost doesn't feel quick. I mean, it is. But the control is so massive that it's not that at any moment they're not controlling that movement. You know, they learn it slow, and then they just are able to do things so quickly, but it's just, you can feel that there's such activation of core and muscles to have that level of control, that precision. So that quick, precise movement is revealing this internal strength of the dancer. They can do slow control. And it's the same as with opera singers. Exactly the same. Diaphragm control. So, you know, for someone to scream is no problem. Anyone can scream. But to be able to do pianissimo, to do a very high, extremely soft, high note, I challenge you to do it. The level of control required. Again, people will dismiss opera singers and say they're just screaming. The level of diaphragm control to be able to do a soft, high, extended soft high note is phenomenal.
I think many also don't know opera singers don't use a microphone in a place that
they don't use a microphone. The reason that they're often very barrel-chested is because of their diaphragm development. It's not that they have a weight problem. So, you know, it's just, again, we kind of are only looking at superficial features and not really valuing, appreciating what is going on under the surface to make that happen, you know, on the surface. And the piece that's so important is I have to enjoy the introvert, the internal, the incognito, the invisible aspects, the invisible effort. I have to enjoy that more than I enjoy the show. And that's very difficult for souls.
Do you find for yourself, though, that, you know, because in the study you also learn you've had previous births of doing lots of very violent things, a lot of aesthetic things, but that can come in, you want to enjoy it, but that stuff can come in and sort of intersect.
And that's why I love the level of information about the self that we're given in this study. We're told ahead of time, I know you enjoy doing this, but just so you know, this temptation is going to come along. Don't be surprised, it's going to happen. And we're told it repeatedly. Now, we might still forget that we've been told, even though we're told repeatedly, but at least we're told. So we can't say we weren't told. Then it's up to me whether or not I actually remember that I was told this repeatedly, that this temptation will come along. You enjoy working at the foundation, the basics, but this temptation will come along, and this is what it will feel like. So I have all the information. You know, if you're feeling heavy or stressed or overwhelmed, then this is what has happened. So I'm told that up front. I have a very, very clear understanding, and you know that yes, this has happened to you, for example, in previous births or even in this birth. This, you know, you've operated this way, so there's remnants of it there. It's going to resist what you're trying to do. Just be aware that's going to happen, but override it. So then you're left with, okay, what effort, what structure, what proactivity do I need to do to help myself knowing that's going to happen? What can I set up for myself knowing that's going to happen? What can I do? So being very proactive, when you know that the first student of the organization was extremely brilliant at how to manage and protect their spiritual efforts, knowing the little traps and pitfalls that will happen along the way. We call it Maya, and told it's going to happen. It's going to be there till the end. It's going to happen. Despite that, their management of that was so profound, it almost looked as if none of those things were coming to them. Even though they said, yeah, no, that all has come to me. All those crazy thoughts that you have, they've come to me too. But there was no signs of it because they were so good at managing and being proactive and creating a structure to protect themselves from being affected by what would inevitably come. Whenever you engage in change, the status quo will fight back. So whatever old habits we have, and this happens in movement. If I've had a long history of inaccurate mechanics with a movement and I'm trying to get the right movement, trust me, the old is going to keep coming back, going to keep coming back. So we say we put the client in a zero gravity environment so that they have some hope. They don't have to fight gravity. For us, the zero gravity environment is silence or meditation. So we're put into this seated meditation so we can take away all the things that usually pull us off in activity and interaction. Zero gravity, so I can experience what accurate alignment feels like. And then the idea being that I take that experience back into action and interaction. But I am in awe over and over again. Wonderful experiences, I'm talking about myself in seated meditation. So conscious, and then the minute I come into sound, it's gone. The integration piece is very difficult for us.
But the hope with the zero gravity is that as if there is like this memory that holds,
that can be activated.
And actually hold that memory in action.
Yeah, to give you an experience of what accurate looks like, and then to carry it over into gravity, into action.
So is this that precision then? Because I was thinking about when I was mentioning, but when I love the example when you talk about the box jumps, because I work with patients with chronic pain. Actually, I work with many individuals who are hypermobile. I've worked with a lot of individuals who do a lot of movement that's very, very loud and very, it's very clunky, and they're there because of what has happened, because of all that repetitive movement. But when you're talking about that precision and, what happens when there is no precision, I suppose, and that's the same then now talking about spirituality, is that if there isn't that precision, which reveals there isn't that power, then there must be something that's eventually going to break. I know you mentioned.
Yeah, it's merciful, because how long should that continue? How long should something that's really damaging continue? There has to be something, hopefully, that will stop it. That moment of stopping it is uncomfortable for us, right? We don't like it, but it stopped us from continuing to do something that's quite damaging. So, again, I need that discerning intellect to be able to read the benefit of that happening. And I know of many dancers who, were hypermobile, who were motivated by ego or insecurity. They're both the same thing. And this went on for quite a while, and then an injury or something would happen. And at first it's just absolutely devastating, because dance is their life. But after a while they say, I'm really glad that happened, because it allowed me to really re-look at what I was doing. And I would have continued on and on that way. I never would have really seen what I was doing. So there is a gift in those. I know that sounds cliched. It doesn't feel that way at the moment it's happening, but if it stops us from doing something that isn't beneficial to the self, that is a gift.
I guess my last question was about when you're mentioning about God being a grace.
Mm-hmm.
It's funny because I had a question from our earlier interview we had earlier today. So I'm just going to take that question that was in there and bring it here in terms of just the relevancy. But in terms of that experience of being soul conscious, it's quite fascinating that it can be abstract for many, it can be real, and then there's these little things that come up. And we were talking about in the interview about God's impact. And so that's why when you're talking about God being a grace, but God's vision of us, God's vibration, and of course the eternal truths that we learn, do you feel that is meant to be able to help us as souls feel what it feels like to be soul conscious? So it just fortifies that experience, that eventually I need to be able to claim that this is actually me and not, I can't constantly rely on his company if I'm not actually seeing them.
Yeah, so that's exactly what a brace does, is it holds me in the proper alignment so I can feel what it's like, with the vision that eventually I will remove the brace. The brace will no longer be necessary. But it needs to be constant. For some of these ligament tears, you have to wear it constantly until that proper alignment is restored. Constantly. You sleep with this thing on. Constantly. With the vision that eventually you will not need it. Right? And so we often say, God's saying, constantly remember me alone. He's like, this brace you must. The minute you take me off, you're out of alignment again. But when you have
Some
me
sort of
on,
forget and put soul consciousness aside. So what would be your response to that?
I can't actually remember him without soul consciousness. It would be horrible to put that brace on when I'm misaligned and it's holding me in misalignment. That would be horrible. So you want to align and put the brace on while you're aligned. This is a bit like a cast. Can you imagine? A cast is put on without the bones set properly. That's horrible. You always set the bones and then you want to brace it in the accurate position. So I want to get, because yes, we've been remembering God in all sorts of ways, constantly. And it hasn't healed the soul. So I need to make sure I'm set in proper alignment and then put that brace on. So that it's bracing me in proper alignment.
Is this there back to the precision that if I'm not, I mean, because we do get a lot of attainments in the, when we don't understand who he is, because there's so much that many attain from many spiritual endeavors that they try to have.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we may not have remembered him,
Mm-hmm.
but we may not realize we're misaligned. So there may not be that power
Absolutely.
eventually.
Yeah, they'll feel the support is there, the brace is there, but not realizing. So again, the wisdom of the first student, Baba, he kind of got ideally how this should work. So he spent an inordinate amount of time mastering soul consciousness. And this actually enabled him to feel very close to the Supreme Soul, to take full benefit from that brace, if you will. That it was actually, and there were signs that he was actually braced in the right alignment. There were signs, and again, we're back to the lightness, the ease, the royalty, in the face of ridiculously complicated situations. That easily could have gone sideways if he was out of alignment. Easily. So these were signs that he was in the right alignment. He was braced in the right alignment. He was using God in the most powerful way because he was soul conscious. So I may have to run away and brace myself for other things.
I assume I should be doing the little.
I think that might be why.
Why not? I mean, we can all practice Raja Yoga while we're in your
Anyway,
environment.
yes, it's very
All right.
good.
Well, thank you, Judy.
All right.
Very, very practically informative. Take care.
Shanti. Bye-bye.
Sorry, I think suddenly the microphone just went out. But if you have questions on YouTube, you're welcome to type in the chat box. But we'll close with a little reflection. One of the greatest acts that I can do for myself is to really look inside. What is my inner world like? What is it like in interaction in a day where there are many things that may be happening, expectations, roles, decisions. many opportunities to be interacting with others. What is my world, my inner world like at that time? And is there ever any blame? Blaming anything out there? If there is ever any sense of frustration inside, any feelings of being overwhelmed, feeling defensive, any critical thoughts about others, the situation, the project? Is there even perhaps blame against myself? The greatest act is looking inside and seeing why there is this blame. What is really happening inside? And what can understanding do? To move forward from blame. These critical thoughts that just only cycle these emotions, where I will find myself in those same situations, in those same emotions, just continue. What is my understanding of myself? In those situations, those moments? Do I really see myself as a soul? And do I know what that even means? There's a world of an experience, a world of insight and realizations in being a soul. That my worth is completely beyond anything of the physical. That everything in the physical is all temporary. I'm just playing these different parts just for namesake in the physical. They're just roles. No one can really see me for who I really am. And the greatest self-mastery is to be able to feel my true worth as this eternal being, child of the Supreme Soul. To feel that eternal identity of me while in these temporary parts. That is the greatest self-mastery. Not rejection, but to feel and live what is true reality in those so-called adverse situations. Because it reveals all of that value that I feel comes from a place that is eternal, not from the situations. I have quiet moments to reflect like this, just to honestly see what's going on inside. But I want to feel those eternal feelings in that quiet time as well. Feel that experience. And even with the eyes open, so that I can carry that experience through the day. I can master that experience, that awareness of me. And in the quiet time, the seated time, feel the presence of my spiritual parents. Become like a brace around me. This vision that holds me in such an elevated state of being. Carry this company like a brace into action and interaction. Keeping in my awareness, this is my eternal self. Everything of the temporary. When I am in this very specific study, everything in the temporary becomes a classroom for me to strengthen this mastery of the awareness of myself, mastery of these eternal feelings for myself. In this study, all these scenes and situations are not meant to be obstacles, but opportunities for me to become deeper, stronger, to learn. It is a game of attitude that can change when I realize who I truly, eternally am. And how much in the quiet time I want to keep recognizing myself again and again. So that vision of me, I can carry that recognition through the day. I use that recognition through the day, again and again. So it can change my attitude about myself and how to see situations as opportunities instead of obstacles. At a very authentic level. Om Shanti. Thank you for joining.